Welcome to the path to bad behavior and how to avoid it. Bad behavior is defined by that which violates your most humane values, and that is compassion, love, kindness for the people you love. Now here's an example. My partner startles while I'm driving and starts criticizing. See, a startle response produces adrenaline. That's why I chose that. It's an abrupt change, and adrenaline amplifies and magnifies emotions. These are the mostly unconscious components of the path to bad behavior. It begins with a perception. In this case, I'm being attacked. And the perception is laden with assumptions, and assumptions always have biases. And they're roughly how it should be. I should be able to drive without being criticized. Of course, the partner can say, I should be able to ride in the car without being afraid. But the perceptions are based on how it should be rather than how it is. And then there's a judgment about the perception. And that's usually unconscious as well. My partner is selfish, a hypocrite. He or she doesn't drive well either. Nagging, controlling, incompetent. And then there's the behavioral motivation. And that's usually emotion, because emotions primarily are motivations. They send action signals to the muscle groups and organs of the body to prepare you for action. And the behavioral motivation in this case is going to be some form of anger or resentment, contempt, or disgust. And then there's an inhibition or constraint. Inhibitions are internal blocks to acting on behavior. Constraints are external blocks. So the inhibition would be compassion. I'm not going to like myself if I devalue my wife. Or dread of consequences. She's going to get back at me in some way. Now, the conscious part of the path is beginning to overcome the inhibitions and constraints. You have to justify, and that usually takes the form of blaming. I should be allowed to drive without criticism. I'm a good driver. This isn't fair. This isn't right. I have a right to be angry. Now, justification and blaming causes more adrenaline. And adrenaline amplifies and magnifies the threat. That's what it evolved to do. It didn't evolve to underestimate a threat. It evolved to exaggerate it to prepare you for action, running or fighting. Now, the action in this case is devaluing my partner, or worse. And then there's the after effects, and that often begins with self-righteousness. I was right. I shouldn't have to put up with this. This is so wrong. Look at all that she does or all that he does. And the self-righteousness and justification is usually followed by remorse, unless the relationship really has deteriorated so greatly. But the problem with remorse is that it's after the fact. It is not a good predictor of more beneficial behavior in the future. In fact, it's more likely to predict recidivism, because who is more likely to behave badly, the valued self or the devalued self? So remorse in the long run predicts recidivism. Now, the earlier in the cycle you intervene, the easier the regulation. Because as it goes down that continuum, you get more and more adrenaline and more cortisol. So the intervention in the beginning, that's the easiest. Evaluate the perception. I'm not under attack. My wife's just nervous. Replace the negative judgment with a more positive one, a more compassionate one. My partner's nervous, uncomfortable, not evil, not out to get me, not controlling, nervous and uncomfortable. And I don't want her to feel that way. And note when you make a more compassionate judgment, note that you like yourself better. Now, when it gets to behavior motivation, that's compassion for yourself and your partner. That's more difficult to do if you still have that negative perception and pejorative judgments. You can still strive to do it if you find yourself stuck there. And again, you're going to like yourself better, be more compassionate to yourself and your partner than if you're angry or resentful. Now, on inhibitions and constraints, we want to focus on the inhibition, and that's compassion. Never justify and never blame. Never justify a behavior you don't want. Justifying it practically guarantees that you're going to do it. If you commit the bad behavior, you need to practice what you will do differently under similar conditions in the future, because your brain has to know what to do differently. If it doesn't, it's going to do the same thing when you're stressed, when you're overheated, when you're tired, when you're distracted, and all those things happen very often while driving. So that would look like the next time I'll go to my core value to access self-compassion and compassion for you. And remember what is most important about me. So you can't value and devalue at the same time. So if you can shift into core value, it makes it much easier to say what you're going to do in the future.